a steel Bulldog perched on a hood, a chrome lever bolted to a steering wheel, a flip-open paper booklet riding in a door pocket for 40 years. None of these things sound dangerous, but every single one of them has been banned, restricted, or written out of the rule book somewhere in America. And if you walk through any truck stop parking lot tonight, from the Iowa 80 in Walcott to a dusty gravel yard in West Texas, you will still find drivers using them every single day. Because when something actually works, truckers don't let it go. Not for a regulation, not for a fine, and definitely not for a sign on the edge of some small town. Today we're counting down 15 truck inventions that work so well the rule makers came after them. Some of these bans made sense. A few of them saved lives. But at least one of them broke the heart of an entire generation of drivers, and we're saving that one for last. Because if you spent any real time behind the wheel of a long-nosed Peterbilt or a cabover freightliner, number 1 is personal. Number 15, the Bulldog on the hood. Since 1932, a chrome Bulldog has stood on the nose of every Mack truck, chest out, staring down the highway. The story goes back to the First World War, when British soldiers said the Mack AC trucks hauling supplies through the mud had the tenacity of a bulldog. The name stuck, and a Mack engineer named Alfred Masuri carved the first hood ornament himself while recovering in a hospital bed, then patented it, and the dog has ridden point on every Mack since. Drivers loved that dog. A gold bulldog meant the truck was Mack through and through, engine, transmission, and axles, and men took genuine pride in that. Then the safety engineers in Europe got involved. Pedestrian protection rules overseas effectively outlawed rigid metal ornaments standing up off a hood, the same rules that forced Rolls-Royce to build a hood ornament that retracts into the bodywork. A solid chrome dog on a flat steel hood didn't stand a chance under those standards. But here in the States, drivers still bolt that Bulldog on, polish it every weekend, and some of the old hands will tell you a Mack without its dog isn't really a Mack at all. The Bulldog only ever cost a man his chrome, though. This next one could cost him a court date, and every driver who ever owned one will tell you it was worth every penny. Number 14, real train horns. A factory air horn on a truck is loud. A genuine locomotive horn is something else entirely. Somewhere along the line, drivers figured out you could mount an actual Nathan air chime off a freight locomotive onto a truck frame, plumb it into the air system, and carry close to 150 decibels of pure railroad thunder measured right at the bell. The favorite was the 5 chime, the same horn that announces an Amtrak crossing 3 miles before you see the train, and it drank air fast enough that a smart driver saved it for the moments that mattered. When a four-wheeler drifted into your lane doing 70 with a phone in his hand, one pull of that lanyard would put his heart in his throat and his car back between the lines. It worked almost too well. Cities wrote noise ordinances. States wrote laws about improper use of a horn, and officers started writing tickets for blasting one in town. But out on the open road, far from any city limit sign, those horns are still up under frames and behind bumpers all across the country. Because a horn that gets ignored is decoration. A horn that moves a texting driver out of your lane is safety equipment, whatever the ordinance says. A horn like that made sure everybody heard you coming. The old operators had their own way of making sure everybody saw you too. Number 13, chicken lights. Nothing said pride of ownership like a truck lit up at night. Amber marker lights running down the fenders, across the drop visor, along the bottom of the bumper, tracing the whole outline of the rig like a carnival ride rolling through the dark. The serious rigs, the ones drivers call large cars, carried them across the cab roof, down the exhaust stacks, and around the frame rails until the whole truck glowed. Drivers called them chicken lights, a name that supposedly goes back to poultry haulers lighting up their loads to keep thieves away at night. Beyond the beauty of it, there was a real function. A fully lit truck is visible from a mile off, and every one of those little lamps made the rig easier to see on a 2-lane road at 2 in the morning. Then came the lighting regulations. Federal Standard 108 spells out exactly which lamps go where and what color they're allowed to be. Blue is reserved for police. Red, facing forward, will get you pulled over in a heartbeat. Some states put hard limits on extra lamps, and fleet safety departments started stripping trucks down to the bare legal minimum to save on maintenance. But go to any truck show in Joplin or Walcott, and you'll see the old operators haven't surrendered an inch. Hundreds of lights, every one of them working, every one of them amber, right up against the edge of the rule book. But lights in chrome were about pride. What winter demanded was grip, number 12, studded snow tires. If you ever ran the northern routes in January, you know what glare ice on Interstate 90 looks like at 3 in the morning. Studded tires were the answer, and by the 60s, nearly every serious northern rig ran them from Thanksgiving to Easter, small tungsten carbide pins set into the tread, biting into ice like cleats on a football field. On a frozen grade, the difference between studs and plain rubber could be the difference between delivering the load and sliding backward into the ditch. The problem was what those studs did on dry pavement. Highway departments started measuring ruts carved into concrete, millions of dollars in road wear every winter, and the bans came rolling in. Minnesota outlawed studs for regular drivers back in the 70s. Wisconsin and Illinois followed the same road. Other states squeezed them into narrow seasonal windows with dates printed right in the law. Yet drive through Alaska, Montana, or the high country of Colorado in deep winter, and you'll still hear that telltale clicking sound on cold asphalt. The old-timers up north never stop believing, because a rutted road can be repaved, but a jackknife truck cannot. Ice tried to kill you from the road up. The sun came after you through the glass. Number 11. Dark window tint. Anybody who spent 12 hours westbound chasing the sun across Nebraska understands why this one exists. That low evening glare burns straight through a windshield and cooks the left side of your face like a rotisserie. Tinted glass fixed it. It cut the glare, kept the cab cooler in a Phoenix summer, and gave a man a little privacy in the sleeper at a crowded truck stop. But the federal rules for commercial trucks are strict. The windshield and both front windows have to let at least 70% of the light through, which is barely a tint at all. Anything darker and you're writing a check at the next scale house. The reasoning was visibility, both for the driver looking out and the officer looking in. Fair enough. But plenty of veteran drivers running their own authority still roll darker glass than the book allows, eat the occasional ticket, and consider it the cost of not going blind on the long westbound afternoons. Ask them about it, and they'll shrug and tell you the man who wrote that rule never drove into a Nevada sunset. Glare cost you your eyesight an hour at a time. The next one on this list could take a man's life in half a second. Number 10. Split rim wheels. Before tubeless radials took over, heavy trucks rolled on two-piece and three-piece rims. A steel base with a locking side ring that held the tire in place. For a driver on the side of the road, they were a gift. You could break one down and change a tire with hand tools in a gravel lot. No special machine required. Fast, simple, and field repairable when the nearest tire shop was 90 miles behind you. The catch was the air pressure. A truck tire holds around 100 pounds per square inch, and if that side ring wasn't seated perfectly when the tire was inflated, it could let go like a bomb, launching steel across the shop. Tire men called them widowmakers, and they earned the name. OSHA eventually wrote strict rules requiring safety cages and clip-on chucks for servicing them, and manufacturers walked away from the design entirely. But the old Macs, the vintage Petes, and half the farm trucks in the Midwest still ride on split rims today, and the men who run them will tell you the wheel was never the problem. Impatience was. And split rims weren't the only tool of that era that demanded respect and punished the man who forgot to give it. Number 9. Snap binders. Every flatbed hand from the old days remembers the snap binder, a lever-action chain binder that pulled a load chain drum tight with one hard throw of the handle. Add a length of pipe over the handle, the famous cheater pipe, and one man could secure a 40,000-pound coil of steel in minutes. On a cold morning with 8 chains to throw, speed like that was worth money. But everything that lever stored, it could give back. A snap binder under tension holds energy like a loaded spring, and when one let go unexpectedly, the handle came around fast enough to break a jaw, a wrist, or worse. Safety departments counted the injuries, and one by one the big fleets banned snap binders outright, mandating slower, safer ratchet binders instead. Some steel mills won't let a snap binder through the gate. The old flatbedders heard all of it and kept right on throwing levers. Their answer never changed. The tool was honest. It did exactly what it said. You just had to respect it. Keep your head out of the swing path, and never trust a chain you didn't tighten yourself. Number 8. The trolley valve. Reach up to the steering column of an old Kenworth or a long-nosed Peterbilt, and you'd find a small chrome hand lever mounted right beside the wheel, the one drivers called the trolley valve, or the Johnson bar. Pull it down, and it applied the trailer brakes only, not the tractor. In the hands of an experienced driver, that little lever was an instrument. If the trailer started coming around on wet pavement, a gentle touch of trailer brake could pull the whole rig straight again. Old hands used it to feel out icy roads and to hold the rig steady on a grade while their feet worked clutch and throttle. The trouble was the drivers who used it wrong, setting it as a parking brake and walking away while the air bled down, leaving a truck free to roll. Trainers began teaching that the valve caused more jackknifes than it cured when panicked drivers grabbed it hard. Manufacturers quietly deleted it from new trucks, and today most drivers under 40 have never touched one. Yet talk to a million-miler who ran Donner Pass in the winters of the 80s, and he'll tell you taking that lever out of the cab was like taking a scalpel away from a surgeon because somebody, somewhere, had cut himself. If this is bringing back some memories, do me one favor and hit subscribe. This channel is built for the drivers who were actually out there, and there's a new story from the old road every week. Now, number 7, and this is where the money gets serious, the glider kit. A glider was a brand new truck without a heart. Peterbilt or Kenworth would sell you a fresh cab, frame, and front axle, and a builder would drop in a rebuilt pre-emissions engine, something like a mechanical Detroit Series 60 or an old N14 Cummins. What you got was a new truck with an engine a man could actually work on himself. No diesel particulate filter clogging up, no regen cycles parking you on the shoulder, no sensors sending you to a dealership 300 miles away. To an owner-operator watching brand new emissions trucks limp into the shop on their third regen of the week, a glider wasn't a loophole. It was common sense with a fresh coat of paint. Companies like Fitzgerald in Tennessee built an empire on them, and owner-operators lined up around the block. That was exactly the problem, as far as Washington was concerned. Those older engines put out far more emissions than a new one, and in 2018, the EPA's Phase 2 rules slammed the door, capping each builder at 300 gliders a year. The industry fought it hard and lost. Overnight, the glider boom ended, but the trucks already built are still out there, hundreds of thousands of miles later, running strong, and their owners guard them like family heirlooms because they may never be allowed to buy another one. Number 6. The radar detector. For 20 years, a detector on the dash was as common in a truck as a coffee thermos. Speed limits in the 70s and 80s were a patchwork. The double nickel was strangling schedules coast to coast, and that little box chirping on the windshield was the only warning a driver got before the crest of a hill. Whether you think that was right or wrong, it worked, and everybody knew it. Then, in 1994, the federal government banned radar detectors in commercial trucks nationwide, Rule 392.71, while leaving them perfectly legal in most passenger cars. Think about that from a driver's seat for a second. The salesman in the Buick doing 80 could run one legally, but the professional with 2 million safe miles could not. Drivers have been pointing out that double standard for 30 years now. Officially, the detectors came off the dashboards. Unofficially, more than a few found new homes tucked behind sun visors and inside CB slots, and the veterans will simply tell you that a man watches out for himself out there, same as he always has. Number 5. The linear amplifier. The CB radio was the beating heart of trucking in the 70s. Channel 19 was the party line of the American highway, and the law said your radio could push 4 watts. 4 watts, when the technology on the shelf could do so much more. So drivers bolted a linear amplifier under the seat, a boot, a kicker, an afterburner, call it what you want, And suddenly that 4-watt radio was pushing 200, 400, sometimes 1,000 watts. On a clear night with the skip rolling, a driver in Oklahoma could talk to a man in Georgia like he was in the next lane. The FCC never budged. Amplifiers on CB frequencies are flatly illegal. The fines run into thousands of dollars, and the agency spent decades chasing signals that bled into television sets and telephones across whole neighborhoods. It never mattered much. The boxes were sold openly as ham radio equipment, and the drivers kept keying up. To this day, park at a big truck stop after dark and listen. Somewhere out there, somebody is running way more than 4 watts, and everybody on the channel knows exactly who it is. Number 4. The headlight language. This one wasn't sold in any chrome shop. It was invented by drivers themselves, one flash at a time. A quick flash of the headlights to a passing truck meant your trailer is clear, come on over. A blink of the trailer lights in return meant thank you, driver. Flashing headlights at oncoming trucks warned of trouble ahead, a wreck, a closed scale, or a patrol car parked in the median. It was a complete communication system with no wires, no license, and no rule book, and it made the highway safer and friendlier for everyone running it. Then police departments started writing tickets for it, citing drivers for warning oncoming traffic about speed traps. One Missouri man fought his ticket all the way into federal court, and in 2014 a federal judge sided with him, finding that flashing your headlights is likely speech the First Amendment protects, and the city backed down for good. The tickets mostly stopped after that, but plenty of officers still frown on it, and some states still try. The old drivers never even slowed down. That language got passed to them by the generation before, and they've been teaching it to the new hires ever since, one courtesy flash at a time. Number 3. The suicide knob. Officially, it's a Brody knob, named after a daredevil who supposedly jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge and lived. It's a spinner handle clamped to the steering wheel, letting a driver whip the wheel around with one hand. In the days before power steering, when backing a loaded trailer into a dock meant fighting a wheel with the resistance of a ship's rudder, that knob was worth its weight in gold. One hand steering, one hand on the shifter, or hanging out the window watching the tandems. The nickname tells you why it got banned. If the front wheel hit a pothole, the wheel could snap back and that spinning knob would break your thumb, your wrist, or your grip at the worst possible moment. Several jurisdictions outlawed them for road use over the years, and most fleets ban them to this day. But walk into any distribution yard in America and look inside the spotter trucks jockeying trailers around the lot. There's a Brody knob on nearly every wheel, spinning all day long because for tight quarters backing there has simply never been anything better. Number 2. The Jake brake. The engine brake was born on a mountain. Back in 1931, engine pioneer Clessie Cummins was coming down a California grade in a diesel truck when the service brakes faded to nothing, and he never forgot the feeling. Decades later, he designed a system that turned the engine itself into a giant air compressor on demand, and Jacobs Manufacturing put it into production in 1961. The Jake brake could hold a loaded truck back on a 6% grade all day long without touching the brake pedal, and it has saved more lives on mountains like Cabbage Hill and the Grapevine than anyone could ever count. It also announced itself. That deep staccato bark echoing off canyon walls is the most famous sound in trucking, and the towns that grew up along the highways got tired of hearing it at midnight. So the signs went up, engine braking prohibited, in thousands of municipalities across the country. Drivers understand keeping quiet past houses at night, most of them anyway. But every one of them will also tell you the same thing. When it's a choice between waking up a neighborhood and smoking the brakes on a downgrade with 80,000 pounds pushing, that switch is getting flipped, sign or no sign. And that brings us to number 1, the paper logbook. For most of a century, a driver's entire working life fit in a flip-open booklet with a grid printed on every page. Off-duty, sleeper driving, on duty. 4 lines drawn in pen at the end of the day, or, let's be honest, sometimes drawn creatively. Drivers called it the comic book, and everybody from dispatch to the scale house knew the game. But underneath the winking and the swindle sheets, that logbook represented something bigger. Judgment. A man decided for himself when he was tired, when he could push one more hour to make it home for his daughter's birthday, and when to shut it down in a safe spot instead of a dark shoulder. In December of 2017, the electronic logging device mandate ended all of it. A computer wired into the engine now records every minute, and when the clock says stop, you stop, even if the safe parking is 20 miles further on. Veterans argue to this day that the ELD traded flexibility for a stopwatch and made drivers race the clock instead of managing their own fatigue. And here is the part the rulemakers didn't count on. Trucks with engines built before the year 2000 are exempt. So across the country, old drivers are keeping their mechanical cats in Detroit's alive specifically so they can keep running paper. One carbon copy grid at a time. The last free men on the American highway. 15 inventions, and one thread running through all of them. Every single one was built or adopted by working drivers solving real problems: ice, grades, glare, fatigue, and loneliness on a 3,000-mile run. The bans came later, written mostly by people who never had to back a set of doubles into a dock in the rain. Some of those rules were right. The Widowmaker rims really did kill tire men, and nobody misses burying a friend over a side ring. But the rest live on in yard trucks and show trucks and old Pete's with pre-2000 engines, kept alive by the generation that knows what they're worth. If you ran those roads, tell us in the comments which one of these you still use and which band made you shake your head the hardest. And there's a video on your screen right now about the trucks themselves, the classic rigs they simply don't build anymore, and why. Click it, driver. The hammer lane is waiting.